Hey there, welcome to the Focus Podcast with Taralee. This is the place where we talk about real life, real relationships, and how to grow through it all. If you're looking for simple mindset shifts, better communication, and deeper connections, you're in the right spot. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Focus Podcast. Today, I want to talk to a very specific person. You're the person everybody calls when something goes wrong. At work, people trust you. You make decisions, you solve problems. Maybe you run a company, maybe you're a physician, an attorney, a business owner, an executive, a leader. Maybe you don't have one of those titles, but in your family, you're still the person who carries everything. Something breaks, you figure it out. Someone needs help, you handle it. There's a crisis, you become very calm and start looking for solutions. And then your spouse says something like, I don't know if I want to be married anymore. Or, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Or, I need space. And suddenly the person who can solve almost anything has absolutely no idea what to do. You can't sleep. You're analyzing every conversation. You're watching whether they wear their wedding ring. You're noticing whether they sit beside you on the couch. You're calculating how quickly they answered your text. You wake up at 2 a.m. thinking, maybe I should send this. No, don't send it. Maybe I need to give more space. But what if too much space makes them realize they're happier without me? Maybe we need to talk. But every time we talk, they pull farther away. And this is where some of the most capable people I know start feeling completely powerless. So if that's you, I want to talk about why. Because I don't think your problem is that you've suddenly become incapable. I think you're using a set of skills that has worked incredibly well in one part of your life on a problem that requires a completely different set of skills. And this matters because you can't outperform a marriage crisis. You can't spreadsheet your way out of emotional disconnection. And you can't research your spouse into loving you again. And you can't force certainty out of another human being because uncertainty makes you uncomfortable. That's what we're going to talk about today. One of the things that I notice with high achievers is that success teaches you a very powerful lesson. Problems have solutions. And most of the time that's true. If revenue is down, you look at the numbers. If an employee isn't performing, you figure out why. If a patient has symptoms, you gather information. If a case isn't going well, you change strategy. You identify the problem and you act. That's competence. And competence is a beautiful thing. But then your spouse says, I'm not happy, and your brain says, okay, tell me exactly what's wrong. Give me the list, I'll fix it. And your spouse says, I don't know. That answer can make a high achiever go crazy because I don't know gives you nothing to execute. So you start digging. Is it me? Is there someone else? Is it our marriage? Do you want a divorce? Do you still love me? What would make you happy? What do I need to change? You're gathering data, but your spouse doesn't experience it as data gathering. They may experience it as pressure. That's the first place success skills work against you at home. You move into fixing before your spouse feels understood. And those are not the same thing. When someone says, I'm exhausted, and you say, okay, here's what you need to do, you may believe you're helping, but what they hear is, you still don't understand why I'm exhausted. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't solve the experience, it's to understand the experience. There's another thing that I see constantly. When your marriage feels unstable, your brain wants certainty. And I understand that. You want to know, are we staying married? Are we getting divorced? Do they love me? Is this temporary? Is there hope? What am I supposed to do? You want the answer because you believe the answer will make you feel better. But here's the problem. Your spouse may genuinely not know. And when someone says, I don't know what I want, and you ask them the same question 12 different ways, eventually they often become more certain about one thing. They want the conversation to stop, and now they pull further away. You feel that distance, and your brain says, see, we're losing them. And that fear makes you pursue harder. They experience more pressure. They pull away more. You become more afraid, and that is the dance. And this is one of the most important things I want you to understand if you're in this right now. You may be trying to get your spouse to give you emotional safety. You're trying to get them to say, I promise I'm staying, so that you can calm down. But what if they can't give you that promise? Can you become steady anyway? Can you learn to tolerate some uncertainty without turning uncertainty into panic? Because one of the most powerful shifts you can make in a marriage crisis is learning to create stability without requiring your spouse to first give you certainty. That changes everything. Now let's talk about communication, because almost everyone who comes to me says some version of, we need to communicate better. And sometimes that's absolutely true, but sometimes you are communicating plenty. You may be communicating for hours. You may have had the same conversation 15 times. You may have sent paragraphs explaining yourself. You may have sat across from each other at midnight saying, we have to figure this out. The problem may not be the amount of communication. The problem may be what happens inside that communication. Does your spouse feel like they have to defend themselves? Do you feel like you have to prove your point? Does one of you shut down? Does the other chase? Does someone correct every detail? Does someone start bringing up evidence from 6 years ago? Do you leave conversations feeling less understood than when you started? If that's happening, you're probably not simply dealing with a lack of communication. You're dealing with a lack of safety inside communication. And that's why I teach this order over and over. Safety, connection, vulnerability. In that order. Safety first, because connection without safety can feel like pressure. And vulnerability without safety can feel dangerous. Let me give you a really simple example. Your spouse says, I need some space. Now let's walk through using the beginning of my focus framework. The first step is facts first. What is the fact? Your spouse said, I need some space. That's it. But your brain probably doesn't stop there. Your brain adds, they're leaving me. They don't love me. They're happier without me. If I give them space, I'm going to lose them. There must be someone else. It's over. Those are not facts. Those are interpretations. They might end up being true. They might not. But right now, they're predictions. And here's why that distinction matters. If the fact is, my spouse asked for some space, you might be able to respond thoughtfully. But if you're responding to, my spouse is leaving me and my family is about to fall apart, your nervous system is going to behave as though the emergency has already happened. And what do we do when we're in an emergency? We act, we chase, we fix, we explain, we demand, we plead, we overpromise. We say things like, just give me 30 days, I'll change everything. Please don't do this to the kids. Tell me what I have to do. Not because you're manipulative, but because you're scared. But your spouse may experience that fear as pressure, and now you've accidentally made it harder for them to feel safe around you. This is why facts first matter so much. It gives you enough space between what happened and what you're making it mean to actually choose your next move. There's another kind of high-achieving marriage that I see. And honestly, sometimes these couples scare me more because nobody sees the crisis coming. They don't have explosive fights. There's no dramatic betrayal. They aren't screaming at each other in the kitchen. They're successful. Kids are doing well. House is running. Bills are paid. Calendar is organized. One person has soccer. Someone else has piano. Dinner gets picked up. Dog gets to the vet. Flights get booked. The machine works. Operationally, they're incredible. But relationally, they're starving. They can coordinate an entire week without ever asking, how are you really? They've become excellent partners in the business of running a family, but they've stopped being curious about one another. And then one day someone says, I feel like we're roommates, and the other spouse is completely blindsided because they thought, we're doing fine, we're not fighting, but lack of conflict isn't always connection. Sometimes it just means the relationship has gotten very quiet. And this is important because marriages usually don't fall apart in one giant moment. They come apart through patterns, through tiny moments, a bid that gets missed, a story that doesn't get asked about, one more night on separate phones, one more conversation postponed, one more time someone thinks they don't really care anyway. And those little moments accumulate. But here's the hope in that. If relationships are damaged through patterns, they can also be rebuilt through patterns. Not usually with one giant vacation, not one dramatic apology, not one 6-hour marriage summit, but small evidence, repeated, safety, consistency, curiosity, follow through, turning toward instead of past each other. That is how trust grows back. If you're listening to this in a marriage crisis, there's probably one question you've asked yourself 100 times. Is my marriage going to survive? And I understand why you want the answer, but you may not be able to answer it today. And the more your brain tries to solve a question that currently has no answer, the more anxious you become. So I want you to replace it, not forever, for today. I want you to ask, who do I want to be in my marriage today? This is a very different question. Who do I want to be? Do I want to be steady, honest, compassionate, clear, self-respecting, patient, courageous? What would that version of me do next? Maybe that means not sending the text. Maybe it means finally having a conversation. Maybe it means apologizing without explaining why you did it. Maybe it means holding a boundary. Maybe it means getting help. Maybe it means allowing your spouse to feel disappointed without rushing to fix their feelings. Maybe it means giving healthy space without disappearing. That's not passivity, that's power. Patience is not the same as denial, and I want to say something here because sometimes people hear me talk about patience or emotional regulation and not pushing, and they think I'm telling them to just sit there indefinitely while their spouse decides their future. But I'm not. Patience and denial are not the same thing. Patience says, I don't need to force an answer today. Denial says, I refuse to acknowledge what is happening. Patience says, I can create enough space for clarity to emerge. And denial says, I'm going to interpret every warm interaction as proof everything is fixed. Patience can still have standards and boundaries. Patience can say, I love you, I don't want this marriage to end, and I'm also not willing to stay indefinitely in a situation where there is no honesty or no movement, no willingness to address what's happening. That's grounded, and that's very different from panic. There's one more pattern that I see that I want to call out. High achievers are often incredibly self-reliant. You've figured out hard things before. So when your marriage starts struggling, your instinct may be, I'll handle it, I'll read another book, I'll listen to another podcast, I'll watch another video, I'll try harder. And sometimes you wait until you're absolutely drowning before you let someone help you. But marriage crisis is one of those places where being close to the problem makes it very difficult to see your own blind spots. I've had clients tell me, I know all of this intellectually. And yes, but knowing something intellectually and assessing it while your spouse is standing in front of you saying, I don't know if I love you anymore, are two entirely different things. That's where coaching matters, because sometimes what you need isn't more information. You need someone to say, wait, that's fear. That's the old pattern. You're trying to get certainty again. Don't have that conversation tonight. That's not actually a boundary. You're defending instead of listening. You're focusing on the smoke. Let's find the fire. And this actually connects to something that I'm doing right now. My private coaching schedule has gotten very full, and I've been wrestling with that because I keep meeting people who need support, but private coaching either isn't available or isn't the level of investment that they want to make. And I don't want the answer to simply be, sorry, good luck. So beginning September 1st, I'm opening a new way to work with me through live group coaching. We'll have a live coaching call every week. And once a month, I'll teach a deeper live workshop around one specific relationship concept. Things like emotional safety, trust, communication, connection, conflict, boundaries, repair. And the part I'm really excited about is that this won't just be a library of information. You will actually be able to bring what's happening in your life and get coached, because information is helpful. Application is what changes things. And I think there's something incredibly powerful about hearing someone else get coached and suddenly realizing, I do that too. Or, oh, this is exactly the dynamic happening in my house. Before that opens, I'm hosting a free live Zoom call on Monday, August 24th at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to teach a little and I'll answer questions live. And for anyone who's comfortable with it, I may bring a few people on with me and coach them around what's actually happening in their marriage. You'll be able to submit questions privately through the Q&A as well. And then we'll walk through different ways you can work with me, including this new group option and my private coaching. There's no cost to attend this. You just need to make sure that you're on my private email list because that's where I'm going to send all the Zoom information and details. And if you're not on my list yet, I'd start with my Marriage Crisis Stage Finder because it will help you get clearer about where your marriage actually is, and you'll also be there when I send out the invitation. Now, I want to leave you with this. If you are incredibly successful in every other area of your life and your marriage is the one thing that has completely brought you to your knees, that doesn't erase everything you know. It doesn't mean you've suddenly become incapable. It means relationships require a different kind of strength. Not the strength to control, the strength to stay grounded when you cannot control. Not the strength to fix another person, the strength to understand them. Not the strength to demand certainty, the strength to tolerate enough uncertainty to respond intentionally. Not the strength to win the argument, the strength to create safety. You already know how to learn difficult things. You already know how to grow. You already know how to do hard things. This is simply a different set of skills, and you can learn them too. So for this week, stop asking yourself to solve your entire marriage. Come back to the facts. Come back to your side of the pattern and ask yourself, who do I want to be in my marriage today? Then take the next right step from there. And remember, what you focus on expands. I'll see you next week. Thanks for hanging out with me today on the Focus Podcast. If something stood out or helped you in some way, feel free to share it or leave a quick review. It means a lot. Keep showing up, keep growing, and I'll catch you in the next episode.